The loss of one's sense of smell is a disorder that affects millions of people across the globe. In fact, it's reported that in the UK alone, over 3 million people suffer from a loss of smell in varying degrees. Now, Absent is a UK-based charity which aims to provide aid and relief to people suffering with the loss of smell through support, through education and practical advice. Their work, headed by Chrissy Kelly, a fellow anosmic, has garnered large attention during the Covid-19 pandemic. As we know, one of the symptoms of having the virus, in fact, is a loss of smell. Many people, even from South Africa, have tuned into her for help, and she is helping so many people. Chrissy now joins us this morning alongside Dr. Simon Gain, who's a consultant rhinologist at the Royal National Throat, Nose and Ear Hospital. And together they'll be telling us a little bit more about the work that Absent does. Very good morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you very much for having us.
Chrissy, I can't even imagine what this must be like for you. I mean, you lost your sense of smell in 2012 after a bad cold. Please tell us a bit more about your story and how you were first introduced to smell training or therapy.
I lost my sense of smell after just a bad sinus infection. It was very troubling to me. I experienced total smell loss for about 6 or 7 months, and then I started getting kind of strange smell messages, which turned into something called parosmia, the distortion of smells. And I know that many people who have had COVID are experiencing this distortion phase, and that makes it very difficult to eat. But for me, for my recovery, it took me about 9 months to get to an ENT who understood a little bit about smell disorders, and he told me that I should try smell training. At the time, there was no real program. There were no real instructions. So one of the things that I really wanted to do was find a way of doing it that worked for me. And once I had hit on that, I wanted to share that with other people.
One can only imagine the effect that this must have on your life, and how I can just try to imagine the brain trying to rewire itself, and to manage something like this must be, as you say, quite a terrifying prospect. But Simon, you can kind of take us back to the beginning. How is smell loss defined?
We talk about sort of degrees of smell loss. So we always take it from a patient point of view. So people will come saying, I've lost my sense of smell. And you can do various tests to look at what they can smell, what they can't smell, how strong something needs to be before they can smell it, whether they can distinguish between that smell and other smells, for instance. And we have numbers, but really it's about the subjective experience of losing this connection with the world, which is very important to a lot of people.
Simon, when would you then say someone that is experiencing this should consider smell training?
Most people should be doing smell training, actually. We know that for normal people, if you watch perfumers when they start learning to mix perfumes or understand perfumes, they have the same sense of smell as me. But the more they practice, the more they develop it, the better their sense of smell gets. So there's nothing wrong with starting it, even if you're worried that your smell isn't as good as it was. But in relation to COVID, there are two types of smell loss. The first is a very sudden loss, and then usually after a couple of weeks you get it back, and it comes back almost completely. In that case, smell training, it might be fun, but it's not necessary for you to get your sense of smell back. But if your smell isn't coming back over the next couple of weeks, then starting smell training is very important. We know there's lots of studies. It really makes a difference to getting your sense of smell back.
I can just imagine trying to eat, that must be one of the, obviously, the key areas. Chrissy, obviously this therapy has garnered a lot more attention, as you have stated, during the last few months because of COVID-19. Can you tell us a bit more about how the pandemic has impacted your work?
Oh, the impact on Absent's work has been incredible. Our membership has grown 5.5 times since the pandemic, started in about February. So we've been swamped with people coming in for information. And of course, the kind of information that we can provide up until just recently is always based on what we knew about post-viral smell loss pre-COVID. So we're doing the best that we can to give people the best quality information. Of course, all the while, if you imagine that all these new COVID-19 patients form a new cohort, their experience might be a little bit different. So we're still discovering that. But one of the things that's unique about the Absent Facebook group is that we're actually watching in real time what's happening to these patients. And we're hearing their stories and getting a good idea about what might be happening in the recovery period. So that's very important. But in the meantime, we support people as best we can with the best information and advice that we have available.
Well, Dr. Simon Gain and Chrissy, stay with us. Just after the break, we'll be discussing the method to smell training a little later on. And of course, you at home, weigh in on the conversation. Expresso Morning Show, SABC3.